Welcome to Small Talk by Sfarim Chatter. I'm Nachi Weinstein. On this episode of Small Talk, I'm going to be joined by Rabbi Noam Grossman, who is the elementary school boys manal at Yeshiva Teres Chaim Teres Emes and in North Miami Beach, and we'll be discussing his newly published book titled Growing Parents, Growing Children, published by Mosaica Press. So thank you, Rabbi Grossman, for joining me.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
What can you tell the listeners about the book?
So I think it's a pretty universally accepted yesod that the probably the most important piece in parenting is being a good role model and setting a good example for your children. They learn more from your actions than from your words. So it's really just trying to make that concept real and applicable to day-to-day life. What does that mean? What does that look like? And really a practical guide to how to make yourself as good as possible and how to make your children be as good as possible.
So did your role as a manal in your day-to-day job, was that the impetus for this book?
It definitely affected, I think the experience of, dealing with children on a day-to-day basis, speaking to parents all the time, definitely contributed to it. I think that, when you're dealing with children on a regular basis, you gain insight into how they think and how they perceive themselves. How they perceive themselves plays such a huge role in what they can go on to accomplish. And, how they perceive themselves is so affected by how the adults around them perceive them, primarily their parents. So it's so important to really, get in early to start very young, right when they're born, even before they're born. And, be that role model, model for them what it means to be a growing person, and really try to affect them, be mashpia on them in the most powerful way you can.
So this is a parenting book that's focused on the parents more than the kids. So it's growing parents, thereby growing children.
Yes. Obviously there's a lot of pieces in there about the children as well. I sort of referred to it along the way a few times as a dual lens. You want to look at your own personal growth. Obviously, we are raising ourselves in this world. Kadosh Baruch Hu put us on this world to become the best version of ourselves that we can be. And we also have a tremendous achrayus to our children to help elevate them to be as great as they can be. But it's a little bit this dual role. Sometimes, one seems to come at the expense of the other. Sometimes they really don't have to, and they go very much hand in hand. So that a little bit is the focus of just trying to get that, to see things and perceive things through that dual lens. But yeah, we're very much trying to work on making ourselves better and have that, positive effect on the children as well.
Where does that process begin? Walk the listener through a little bit, some of what you discuss and you theorize in the book.
Okay, so it starts, the first chapter really, after the introduction, it really starts with a pretty significant focus on the idea of Gadlus Adam. This is, very, it's found all over the place in the Musar Sfarim. But it's an understanding of how great we can be, which, again, how great we can be helps propel us forward. And it helps when we have that understanding of the greatness of every human being, it could help propel our children forward. And when we become better role models, it helps them become better people. So that's really the first step. The first step starts with that focus on Gadlus Adam. There are also, I guess you'd call them contemporary or secular sources that are brought up. There's a great English book called Mindset by Carol Dweck. So, there's a growth mindset and the fixed mindset. So you very much want to model that growth mindset. We're talking about growing, so we have to have an understanding of how far we can go, and also to really make that very much a goal for ourselves and for our children. So that's step one. Step two is just an understanding of the fact that people are complicated. There's people are not simple. We're not simple. Our children are not so simple. It's so easy to sometimes, just like, a child acts this way, this is how you respond. That's the tantamount to, in medical terms, the take two of these and call me in the morning. Like, you don't just do that. You have to have an understanding of what a child is, what a human being is. I guess this would be dubbed in the most resources as, kochos hanefesh, and just an understanding of how, what a human being is made up of, and the emotions and the multiple layers. So those are really the first two steps. After that, it segues a little bit into speaking to our children and the balancing how important it is to guide them in the right way, but at the same time not compromise on the relationship with them, which is it can be a very tough balancing act. You have to correct them. You have to, give mussar, so to speak, on some level, but at the same time, that can sabotage a relationship. So that's sort of the next step. And then from there, it goes into actual, real, regular midos. We talk about honesty. We talk about hakaras hatov, appreciation versus entitlement. We talk about respect and demanding respect versus earning respect. And what about showing the kids respect? So that it goes into those. That's basically the sequence of how it develops.
Right, that's the structure of the book, and those are all the chapters. Most of what you said also, at least those little headers, are the headers of the book. The sky's the limit, people are so complex, how to give, how to get, discipline, the power within, appreciation versus entitlement, it's too good to be true, respect through respect, and then you have the conclusion, where you talk about parenting as a shtadlos, there's no shtadlos, what already happened, etc. If you want to talk a little bit about the conclusion, also what the climax of the book is, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I think that generally speaking, we're very good at beating ourselves up and feeling very guilty. I guess I did not want to contribute to that. Writing a parenting book, people are reading it, and typically we're berating ourselves. We love our children very much. We want to be the best we can for them, and we often, think about the fact that we've messed up. We haven't done as good of a job as we would have wanted. So, there is, I just felt it important to balance that a little bit with a reminder that at the end of the day, parenting is hishtadlos. It happens to be, I would say, just as a plug, it's great to do hishtadlos by working on yourself. That's something you need to be doing anyway. It's stam a chiyuv that we all have. But it's important to remember that it is hishtadlos at the end of the day. And really, also focus on, it's growing parents, growing children. We want to grow. We're not aiming for perfection. We're aiming for growth. We're aiming to just become better and better. And that's, talk about davening, how davening is also a form of ishtadlus. That's really, the end is a little bit just balancing, trying to balance it all out.
Yeah, and a couple of things that you point out there is that, first of all, parenting is hishtadlus. And so our job as parenting is not to determine the end result, but is to put forth our best effort. And then from there, whatever will happen, and daven, as you're saying. And also, there is no hishtadlus for what already happened, and you illustrate that with some stories, and we'll talk about some stories and sources in a minute. But another thing that you highlight, I think it's worth pointing out here, is the worry of how we are parenting helping or hurting. And something we're always anxious about as parents. And so, as you point out, it's what's our reaction to that anxiety?
Right. Which, like I said, you have to make sure that, guilt and anxiety typically get a pretty bad rap, and rightfully so, because it's often not productive, but they are important emotions and feelings that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created within us, and if it's propelling us to push ourselves more and to try to to put in more effort, and it's helping the cause. So then, matova manoim. Obviously, you don't want to overdo it because that could lead to a person burning out and giving up and being miyash. You don't want that either. But at the same time, if it's helping push you in the right way and it's helping you elevate your game in terms of how good of a role model you are, how focused you are on trying to help your children, then that's a great thing. So you want to keep that balance.
Now, as it pertains to sources, you mentioned earlier already the classic Bali Musar and Gadlas Adam, Karas Nefesh, and those type of things. And anyone flipping through the Sefer will see you quote Rabbi Volba, you quote Rabbi Hoffman, who's now become very popular over recent years. What are the sources, especially the Jewish sources, that you focused on throughout the book?
Right. So you mentioned a few of them. Definitely a lot of the Sifrei Moser, the Mesilas Yesharim, Rabbi Solanter, the Altar of Slobodka, and there is Chavos Alvavas quoted, and there's also just there's other Mamari Chazal sort of scattered within. There's a few Moser Shmuzim, I guess you would call them, from different assorted parashas in the Torah, and. There's also a lot from Rav Hoffman in there. This actually went to publication before I got to read Kamayim, although I was happy to see that I think it dovetails and works with the Kamayim movement very nicely, I think. So those are really most of the sources. Definitely a lot of sources quoted in there. And like I said before, there's also some secular sources that we don't live our lives based on the secular sources. It's all rooted in Torah and Moser. But some of the secular sources, sometimes they help highlight certain things. They bring it a little bit more to life. There's some interesting studies that make things a little bit more practical. There's a very famous I have heard it quoted all over the place now. This marshmallow study that was done, but it's a little bit making it more practical. Like, what do you do with the marshmallow study? Because I think a lot of times it's quoted and then it's just kind of left hanging. People did these, to just, I guess, go through the short version. People basically, the study that was done was to test kids' ability to delay their gratification. You offer the child one marshmallow, if they eat it, then they get the marshmallow. If they can hold back from eating it till mommy comes back, they get a second one. So it's a very cute thing, and you see how the kids try to hold themselves back from having the second one. Some do it, some don't. Some parents, I think, have done that experiment with their own kids. But what are you trying to get from that? What do you see from that? And we talk about how powerful it is to delay the gratification, how important of a tool that is in life. And then just some practical eitzas as to how do you work on developing your child's ability to delay their gratification, because ultimately that's the point. So it's bringing in some of those secular sources to highlight and just bolster some of the sodos.
Now, there are a number of stories throughout the book. Are these stories that you found in sources or other places, or are there stories here that actually happened to you as a manal in a yeshiva?
Yes, the answer is yes. Both are true. Some of the stories are stories that are famous stories that I've read. Some of the stories I just found to be very, very powerful and inspiring in one way or another. And yes, a whole bunch of stories are ones that I've experienced firsthand. Or have heard from other mechanchim who have experienced them firsthand. And, I find that stories are an extremely powerful tool, obviously for children, but very much so for adults. It's engaging and it keeps people interested. But more than that, it makes it real. It makes it very, very, very practical. A story helps take a concept from the theoretical into the practical. It's only one application of a concept, but sometimes if you have that one application, it just makes it so much more real. And now the reader can now take it and apply it in other ways too. But yeah, many of those stories are from firsthand experience. I obviously had to change some of the details around, but yes, there's a whole slew of stories in there that are there to make things interesting and to really help bring it to life.
Do you have a personal favorite to highlight, and whether that's a personal story or one that you heard, not something that actually happened with you?
One story that I'll leave out, I guess, some of the details, but it's not one that I heard. It's one that I guess you can say I experienced on some level. But basically, there was I think this comes up in the chapter where we talk about how important it is to have an understanding of children, and how understanding them very much affects how you deal with them. So there's a great story that highlights that. There was a great parent, who was taking her children to Central Park, and she took them on the subway. And she gets to the subway station. One of the children was a thrill seeker, out there, and the other one was a little more on the anxious side. And they see this yellow line at the edge of the, right near where the subway comes. It's at the edge of the walkway. And the children ask their mother, what does that mean? So she explains, well, that's the edge of the walkway. We want to make sure nobody gets, too close to that. So immediately the thrill seeker starts walking closer to the line. Because this is very exciting. It's a little dangerous. Like, let's see how close we can get. And the anxious one starts immediately backing away from the line. So at that point, it's, highlighting to the thrill seeker, maybe we shouldn't get so close. And then, toch kedei dibur, obviously you can't make different, balancing different rules for different children is also an avoda. But, the anxious one can be told, it's okay, you could come a little closer. You don't have to back, 17 feet away from the line. You could get a little bit closer. So, it's highlighting how important it is to have a real understanding of the children and deal with them and treat them accordingly.
Who would you say the book is meant for?
Okay, so that's a great question, because I think most people will read the title. They'll say, okay, growing parents, growing children. I'm still in yeshiva, or I'm still in seminary, not quite a parent yet. Maybe I'll look that one up in a few years. I think while it's definitely very much geared to parents, I think that especially with this yesod, and the idea being that we want to work on ourselves as much as we can so that we could be the role model that we want for our children, it really starts before we're parents. It really, I think once somebody is already in that mind frame where they want to, they're b'nei aliyah or b'nos aliyah, they want to try to, grow at that point, I think it's already very applicable. It's very nogea. I think that there's a lot of yesodos. Some people think about most people think about marriage. When they're already, you have a bacher who's 20, 21 years old, you have a girl who's, high school, seminary, they're on some level, they're already thinking about marriage. They're not necessarily thinking about children, but I think that, somebody who's at that stage in life, I think it could already be a great tool for. I really see it on some level. I call it, I'm not trying to, be sneaky in any way, but in a certain sense, it's really it's a Musar Sefer that's disguised as a parenting book. Ultimately, that's really what it is. It's to help you grow as a person and as a parent. And Mamela, when you grow as a person, you're growing as a parent. So I think some people, it's hard for them to push themselves. But it's like, when you start thinking about okay, wait a second, I'm going to be leading a family at some point. So now all of a sudden it's this new hechrich, it's this new oh, wow, I'm going to have this responsibility. And all of a sudden it focuses you in a way that you wouldn't necessarily have without it. But it really is obviously, for parents, it's for people who are future parents. And it's really never too late. A person could also be a parent for 25 years. And at the end of the day, our children forever look up to us and, can grow from us. So I think that it could really be, if you're a grandparent, I think you can gain from it also.
So I'll link to it in the show notes. And as with all Mosaica books, if you use code CHATTER, CHATTER, you can get 15% off from Mosaica's website. And thank you, Rabbi Grossman, for joining me on this episode of Small Talk.
Okay, thank you so much.